Okay, wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I am Dr. Renee Dorn, and I am the Director of Alumni Relations for the Graduate School of Education and Psychology. And I would like to welcome you to the Student Alumni Roundtable for the EdD in Educational Leadership, Administration, and Policy Program, also known as ELAP. Before we get started, I'd like to mention the mission of Pepperdine's Graduate School of Education and Psychology. Pepperdine University Graduate School of Education and Psychology is an innovative learning community where faculty, staff, and students of diverse cultures and perspectives work collaboratively to foster academic excellence, social purpose, meaningful service, and personal fulfillment. As a graduate school within a Christian university, GSEP endeavors to educate and motivate students to assume leadership roles in professions that improve and enrich the lives of individuals, families, and communities. At GSEP, we embrace human diversity, which we believe to be the natural expression of God's creation, in our work to advance learning and service. GSEP advances, sustains, and advocates for multicultural proficiency. So I wanted to make sure that I read everyone that statement before we got started. And so at this time, I would like to introduce you to Ms. Sophia Henriquez. She is the Alumni Relations Analyst, part of our Alumni Relations team. And there are a couple of things that I want to make sure that if you have any questions, please put the questions in the chat so that we can answer your questions after we hear from our alumni. And if you have any questions that you would like to speak verbally to us, you'll have an opportunity to do that after our alumni give their short presentations and answer a few questions for us. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to introduce you to the speakers for today. We have Dr. Ebony Kane. She is Program Director for the EdD, basically the ELAP program. And she's also Assistant Professor of Education for GSEP. We have also Dr. Norman Vigila. I know I may not be pronouncing that right. I'm so sorry. Dr. Norma. She is a GSEP alum and she is principal at Learn for Life Network. We also have Dr. Margarita Landeros. She's also a GSEP alum from the ELAP program, and she's a counselor support specialist with Green Dot Public Schools. And then we also have Dr. Becky Sombera. She's also a GSEP ELAP alum, and she is with California State University, San Bernardino. So let's get started. Let me get started with Dr. Kane. Dr. Kane, please talk about what's going on with the ELAP program.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm very grateful to have our alumna here today on this call, but I am also really excited for our future alums, our current students who are here on this call. ELAP's a pretty special program because all of our programs are in the School of Education, so they're all focused on education, but ELAP's special that we have people who are situated in education, and we really get to think about what it means to be an educational leader and what type of leadership skills are going to be pertinent as we think about going into this new global reality. Our students, you all, were on the front lines of these really contentious changes that were happening all around us. And using the space of ELAP and GSEP as an opportunity to think about what that looks like, push on each other's practice, and really develop ourselves into the type of educators and creating the type of learning spaces that we need and want is at the core of the work we do. really excited about how active our students are right now. One of the really exciting things that is happening right now in ELAP is we have the KDP, which is the Kappa Delta Phi Honor Society. What's really exciting about that is some of our leaders of the KDP are here on the call today. And they're really thinking about what does it mean to be a leader in education, and how do we create that as a backdrop for creating community within our program. So that's just one of the many things that are happening. But what I'm most proud of and excited about when I think about ELAP is the way in which the people in this program, the students that are in the classes and the alumni that are out in the field are really showing what leadership means, not as a conceptual idea, but as a practical, principled purpose in what they do in their day-to-day lives. Thank you. So I'm really excited to hear from everyone and to have this conversation, because this is our sacred space, and I get really excited whenever we have an ELAP-centered space.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Kane. Now to hear from our alums. And the first question that I actually want to ask each one of you is, why did you select the ELAP program? What was it about this particular program that piqued your interest, that you wanted to receive your doctorate in this area? So Dr. Vejela, let's start with you.
The reason I selected this program was because it put people first. I think at the time that I was looking for a doctoral program, you know, I had 2 children, single mother, and just connecting with the people that were already either in the program or running the program, it always felt like they had my best interest first, and they were willing to support me all the way. And I would say, you know, I wasn't disappointed, because all the way I met a lot of great people that just encouraged me to finish. And I think I finished because of the great program, but also because of the people that you put to surround us to finish, to get to the end.
That's excellent. Excellent. Dr. Sumbera, what about you? Why did you select the ELAP program?
You know, I have to tell you that I looked for a few years, and I tried to do local doctorate program. I didn't even finish the semester with them because they weren't people focused. They weren't interested in helping the community or the service aspect. They were more worried about, you know, this is a degree. So I think it comes back to, I wanted to be in a place that not only that would build, you know, what I can do to have service within the community, but also an opportunity to hear various perspectives that are out there in a holistic way of how do we support individuals that are in the K-12 system. And this seemed to be the best fit possible. And plus I was an undergrad at Seaver College, Pepperdine University. So it's like coming home. It was my original pick, but I thought, oh, you know, let me go a little bit closer. And it was just, I could not finish. The difference in education is about, you know, more holistic in the perspective. So I think you, with ELAP, you have that support. You have the individuals in the program who are in that mindset.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Landeros, why did you select the ELAP program?
Yes, thank you for having me, and welcome everyone. So I was looking at schools in Southern California since I wanted to stay local, and I was really looking at schools where I was going to have a lot of support. I went to Berkeley undergrad, I went to USC and Harvard for grad school. So my programs, I was naturally used to this bigger environment. And I knew as my programs got smaller through graduate school, I thrive better in smaller environments. So I was really looking for that for myself. I think I really, really developed as a learner at Pepperdine because my cohort, I'm part of C10, so there were 11 of us. I was able to call my professors, text them, talk to them whenever I needed support. And I got that instant just connection around the warmth and the support that is given, even from the moment that I was interviewed for the program. It was very evident in the conversation, the way that it was tailored compared to other programs I was also interviewing for. I just felt like that there was a lot of testament in the actions that were taken leading up to my admission that gave me a sense of what I was going to encounter once I became a student there. And I also appreciated the fact that I'm a person who's done K through 12 and higher ed, that the program didn't just focus on K through 12, that there were folks there from higher ed. There were also folks from not necessarily direct service to students, but also the other end of like HR, marketing. So there was just a lot of opportunity to learn from other fields. And I was looking for that type of learning experience as well.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because I think a lot of times when we look at even just the name of the program, we're thinking this is just K through 12. But since you mentioned that higher education is a part of the program, that's also very good to know. Thank you. Thank you for that. So for my next question, what were some of the challenges that you faced while you were in the ELAP program, and how did you overcome some of those challenges? This time I'll start with Dr. Sombera. Could you tell us some of those challenges?
I think some of the challenges was making sure that, you scheduled your time appropriately, because you're working full time. And you want to have that experience with your cohort members. You want to make sure you're collaborating with them. So like Margarita said, that you can learn from them too. It's not just about you getting the work done, it's about that collaboration. And really, it's not just getting the assignments done. It's more to it. So how can you take what you're learning and incorporate it within your position? So I found at times it became challenging because whatever was going on at work. But then when I started to take what we were doing in class and apply it into my workplace, it was seamless. And so it took me a semester and a half to figure that out. But once I did that, it didn't seem like an additive. It seemed like I was getting the support I needed in order to do my job. So I tried to take what I was learning and apply into everyday situations in my work life. And then it wasn't just reading, it wasn't just assignment, it was stuff I was putting into practice. So I think that was a challenge at first, getting used to that. But after that, it was great. And we have a large cohort, but then we had sub cohorts, I guess, in there that we had working groups. And I had just the best working group that you could imagine, from all aspects, different perspectives. And so that even grew me further. So I took advantage of my cohort members and their expertise.
Well, that's good to know. You know what? I want to ask the other two alums, were your cohorts very important to your growth within the ELAP program? And how did those cohort members help you once you finished the ELAP program? Dr. Vijayla, I'll start with you.
I've made my best friends, through my cohort members. I have very good people that supported me all through. Like, one of the challenges was like constantly being the one that felt like I'm going to be the one that's going to give up, because there was a lot of work, and with, with commitments and home life, and life happens. But having the cohort members constantly encouraging you, and even having working groups, I had those working groups where we would meet up for weekends and just like work together and encourage each other, and like talk about what are the struggles and how not to give up. And I felt blessed that I met wonderful people. I think you do, Pepperdine does such a great job at putting people together. And I think I found like wonderful people that just fit what I needed at that time. And up until now, I still have my, we used to meet every like 5 weeks, we used to meet for class. I still have that, like with my girlfriends from the cohort, that we still meet. It's either for a lunch or a breakfast or a weekend together, that we could say, let's, continue to grow together, because we're still growing professionally, and whatever we were doing in ELAB, it's still something that carries on to what we're doing now. And I think that's the best thing that I got from Pepperdine, was like I got really a good group of people that can continue to help me grow as a professional, but also as a person in this beautiful earth.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Dr. Landeras, tell us about your challenges and your experience within ELAB, and talk a little bit about your cohort members.
Yeah, so I think when I saw the question, like it's hard to really think about challenges that I experienced within the program itself, outside of, you know, what Dr. Sombrero mentioned, the timing piece, and just making sure that you communicate well with your employer around the expectations. And even I think it was during my first transition jobs, right? So where I started was not necessarily where I was continuing. So being able to communicate even before I started to say, these are going to be the times when I have to be out for these reasons. And I just happen to be in a very supportive environment where other coworkers had also earned their doctorates, so they understood the type of commitment that it required. But I did, you know, I did still have to just make sure I worked diligently for those days that I had to leave earlier, especially because I was at the school site. And if any folks are at the school site, you know that one person missing at the school site, it's like you're missing 10 people, right? So you really have to prep for that transition when you leave on a Friday afternoon. But I would say, you know, overall, you know, I wish this cohort or those who are coming in would have been able to experience the in-person orientation, because I bonded instantly with my cohort. As I said, there were 11 of us. My 3 roommates that I had during that orientation, we you know, became really close with one another from that moment. But then just throughout, because we were such a small, just tight-knit community, we really have bonded. And there were 2 of us that actually stayed at the local DoubleTree every weekend. And even though I live 10 minutes away, I just felt like it was important for me to be there and be in that mental space and physical space to say, I have this community, or I'm building this community. And I was just, you know, I just messaged her as well, like, hey, this is happening in case you want to join. But, you know, she's one person that I still talk to, very close friend of mine. And not just her, other cohort members too. I just don't see them as often, but we're very close community. You know, for those of you who knew Dr. Bardner, you know, we definitely got to connect over his passing as well, his retirement, and even just with the staff that and the faculty that I met throughout the program. I'm still connected with different folks. So just, you know, outside of my cohort, also these different members of the Pepperdine community. So I think for me, you know, in terms of finding a community, I couldn't have asked for a better cohort or a better experience. And I see Sabet joining us again. So she, you know, we were like yin and yang. But just going through the dissertation process, I would say I was lucky to finish when I finished, truly because of the support that I received from the university. But then also, even as I mentioned, Sabet joining me here, we would go spend day long, you know, just like writing at the library. Every evening we possibly would go to the library and write. So I think, you know, that's really, again, part of the way that these different systems of support manifested for me.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you for Savette for joining us. I wanted to ask all of the alums, it sounded like all of you were working at the same time you were going to school or in classes. So how were you able to balance going to school and then going to work? How did that work? How did you work? And in addition to what was going on at home? So how did you balance work life and classes all at the same time? So any one of you can answer that.
It was definitely make sure you have that schedule. It has to be a planned schedule. You have to have certain time where you're going to be reading. I tended to get the books on tapes that were on tape. So my travel time down to DoubleTree, where I was going over the books, the information. But you have to really have a schedule. You have to have, your work time, you have to have your family time, you've got to schedule it all in, and you've got to stick to that. And maybe your cohort members will help you with, ensuring that you're sticking to a schedule. That's your biggest support, is your cohort members, and finding out what they're doing, how they're planning it. But if you don't have a plan, it's not going to be easy. So you've got to have a plan. Like I said, I started to take what I was learning, and those were the projects I would do at work. I was a principal at the time. I changed positions twice during my time in ELAP. So promotion and then promotion. And so it was due to the fact I was utilizing the information in order to drive my work, and that made it a little bit easier.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. So let me ask you, so since all of you were working at the same time as going to school, how did you transition from student to graduate and then to your current position? And I also want each one of you to tell us what you are currently doing in your positions. So Dr. Vijayla, I'll start with you.
So just like Dr. Simbera, a lot of the learning that I was doing during ELAP, it was forcing me to think about like how to be very strategic and structured about everything that I was doing in my daily work at work, and utilizing that information to also complete the assignment. So it kind of like it starts blending in. And then when I graduated, dissertation actually pushed me a step forward, because I did my dissertation on everything that I've been working on for a couple of years, that now I'm able to use my dissertation kind of like a framework. And that framework is driving program development at the high school where I'm at. I work with at-risk high school students, alternative education, and my dissertation was studying people that graduated, that were previous dropouts, but graduated with either a bachelor's, a master's, or a doctorate degree. So a lot of that work now I'm able to put it into like a really good package that is like a framework, and everything that we do has to be part of this framework. And that also has pushed me to extend myself into doing like consulting, or doing speaking events, or doing like just other things that are getting me more exposure, but also it allows me to learn a lot more. But I think everything was interconnected, and it gets to a point when you're doing all of this work during ELAB, and then you do your dissertation when it all makes sense, and kind of like you continue in this path, and you're like, it makes sense. And now I have a language, and I have a structure, and I have a framework, and I'm able to be more productive, because everything that I've learned, I'm applying it to it. We talk about participatory action research. I think every project that I run at my school, I run it with that mindset, that everything has to be in that stage. And I think ELAB did such a great job at like really forming that thinking process for us. That is like, now anytime that I'm able to present something, I'm looking at everything like, okay, how do we use data to drive the instruction? How do we use this structure? What is the timeline, so that it doesn't feel like it's just change for people? So it's everything kind of clicks in, and now I'm in a place where I'm constantly looking for like, what else could I continue to do with the information that I have, with the learning, and also how do I continue to grow so that I can impact other students.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's excellent. I'm going to ask you, Dr. Landeros, what about you, transitioning from student to graduate into your current position? And please tell us what your current position is.
Sure. So, I mean, I worked full-time while I was a graduate student at the master's level. So going into Pepperdine and working full-time and being a student wasn't too different for me necessarily, especially because I had just gone through, I didn't have a gap. But I think for folks that had a gap, that transition was a little different, right? I was very tactful about the moment I left work, and I left work late, but very tactful about the moment that I left work, that that's when I put on my student hat. And, as I mentioned, I would either meet Savette here at the library or we would meet at a coffee shop and just kind of focus on what we needed to do for school. And particularly once we got to that final year and we're really working on our dissertation. But I think prior to that, I had to be very intentful about making that distinction for myself to make sure that I leave as much as I could at work. To then be able to be a student, especially on those weekend sessions when we had to be on campus. I mean, it's just really hard. And between classes, your short breaks to attend to anything other than what you're there to do, which is school. I also think, as folks have alluded, time management was definitely key, but you do, I can remember, I think, about halfway into year 2 and definitely year 3, you really are just a student and an employee most of the time. So there's a lot of sacrifices you're gonna make. There's a lot of things you're gonna miss, just like any other big demand in our lives, right? That really takes up a lot of time. But I think once you get to that other side, it's worth it. It's definitely something that's exciting. And as Norma shared, my work was very aligned to what I was doing through PAR. My work was realigned to what I did in my dissertation. If anything, what I was doing professionally became elevated as a result of that experience and that process. So everything we did through the program always was in tandem with what you are doing as a full-time employee. And I don't know if that's still a requirement of the program where you're working full-time, right? So you're a full-time professional because you are, you're doing as you learn. And that's something that's pretty neat, that you're really applying the theory. For me, I've always been big on like, I don't just want to learn the theory. I wanted to really understand what it looks like, because theory on paper looks nice and sounds nice, but if you can't put it into practice, then what's the point of it existing, right? So, which is also why I did an EdD program versus a PhD program, which I think might be another question that for those of you who are considering might be wrestling with, why an EdD versus a PhD. In terms of what I'm doing now, I'm a counselor support specialist. So I was a former school counselor and a school leader for charter school. And my dissertation actually was around counseling in charter schools. And for me, I wanted to learn how to become a better counselor in a non-threatening way. So learn from what other schools were doing. And this was also during a time when I think there was still a lot of competition between different charter organizations. I think now there's more openness to share resources and information. So I saw it as an opportunity to really grow as a professional, and in doing so by learning more about what other schools were doing. But to echo Norma's point around PAR, or participatory action research, when I was a student, PAR was also something newer in academia. Now it's the thing, right, that everyone does. But even for us as a core, it took us a while to wrap our heads around, like, PAR is not a project. Like, what does it really mean, right? It's a process. But I think it's something that really is useful now as a professional. I continue to engage in different cycles and looking back at what am I doing, why am I doing it, and evaluating consistently to then pivot the work that I'm doing. So, and even just, this weekend, for anyone who's in academia, we're at AERA. That's the largest educational research organization in the nation. So I got to chair a few different sessions. And, I that's another, I think another thing that I also wrestled with was I want to be in touch with the academy, but I don't want to do a PhD. And how do I make that happen for myself without doing a PhD, but still staying connected to academia? So that's a space where I've been able to do that. So that's another thing, that, if you're thinking like, I want to do research and I want that to be my full-time job, that's where you have to toggle between a PhD and an EdD. Or if you're thinking an EdD program, how do I make that happen for myself? And what connections do I need to make now to ensure that that's the route that I take?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Londeros. It's so nice that we have another alum that's able to join us today. So I'm going to ask Dr. Pierre John, hopefully I said that correctly. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience within the ELAP program?
Absolutely. My name is Savette, and my background is in higher education. I've been serving the CSU system for over 20 years now. My background started as an academic advisor. I saw issues and policies that were set to have access for individuals who were being underserved. However, I felt that there were issues and policies that affected them in retention wise. And therefore, I continued my education, getting a master's at Cal State Northridge, and I then started the Pepperdine program. I'm very open and honest about this. When I came to Pepperdine's program, I knew it was mainly K through 12. My cohort members were going to be K through 12. I picked that intentionally because in higher education, sometimes we don't have an understanding of our students coming into the university. So it was very, very important for me to learn from my colleagues, in addition, where I knew I would also get the K through 16 experience at the same time. And that was one of the main things that I loved about our program. Currently, I'm the interim director for the Student Resource Center EOP Satellite for the College of Arts, Media, and Communication. Our area serves students in regards to academic advisement, disqualification, probation, where I fell in love with the student population of probation when I did my PAR project at Pepperdine. And once I graduated, I was able to implement what I learned through the process and how I do everything intentionally now for the student outcomes. And I loved our program. I learned so much from my classmates. Maggie and we still keep in touch. She tells me about, what's happening in K through 12, because I really think it's very important for individuals in higher education to know that process.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you. Thank you for joining us to tell us a little bit about your experience. Now I want to ask each alum, what is a tip that you could give to the current students or prospective or newly admitted students that would help them to succeed within the ELAP program? And I'll start with Dr. Landeros.
Thank you. I mean, there's a lot of things. It's hard to kind of think of one, but I would say, something that you learned, and it's something that we learned quickly as well. Sometimes folks take the EdD route because they're thinking 3 years and I'm done. And you'll learn quickly that it might not be 3 years. It might be longer for you. I was, the only one in my cohort who did the 3 years. And then there were a few folks who did the 4 years. And one thing we learned, right? I think we all came in like, we're going to be done in 3 years. And then we realized like, it's really not up to you. It's really up to your dissertation topic and the route that you want to take, right? And those are going to be some of the questions you're going to have to wrestle with yourself too, is if I do this, where am I taking a shortcut? And the possibilities of my research and the impact of my dissertation, right? And I think that, if my dissertation lends to 3 years, then also just kind of understanding what does that mean for you, right? So I would say it's going in and not necessarily with the mindset of I'm just gonna go and check things off the list and finish and be done with it, but really being open to what do I hope to get out of this and what might this mean in terms of the time frame that I'm looking for. Because the reality is, and I remember before there used to be an old joke, right, where you never ask the doctoral student when they're going to finish because they really don't know. So I think it's just being patient with the process. There are different things along the way that are going to, years 1 and 2, you have control over, but year 3 and thereafter, there are things that are just not going to go as planned, and you have to be okay with that and be open to the direction that your research might take. As well, and knowing that, I may be up against this timeline, but is this going to limit me, or what is it going to do for me? And I think for me, thinking back as someone who wanted to be in the fast track and who likes to have control, I did wish I would have said, it's okay if it takes me that extra year or that I didn't plan for, if it allows me to expand the impact of my dissertation. Not that I'm not happy with the final result or the outcomes of it, but I do see, looking back, where maybe I could have expanded this, or I could have gone in this other direction. And you can always do research once you finish, right? Once you have your doctorate, and you continue to practice in your research. But yes, just being open to the fact that life is going to continue to happen and take its different turns. And that dissertation process is also going to test you in those ways. And in an exciting way too, because there's a lot of excitement that comes from it. And Sabet could probably tell you the times we're excited about, a new article that we found, and something new that we found in our research, because she also helped me triangulate my data, and vice versa. So there's points of excitement in the midst of all that unplanned and frustration that comes with not knowing what's going to come and when it's going to come.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I'll go next to Dr. Sombera. Tell us a tip that you can give the students.
I think that the biggest walk away for me is enjoy yourself. Enjoy your cohort members, really get to know them. Don't be in a rush. The dissertation process is a dissertation process. And really take what the programs, they're trying to teach different concepts. It's a well thought out program, and take those concepts and start applying them. I know even today, a lot of stuff I learned from the program. I was teaching, I was a principal, but I was also an adjunct for Pepperdine within the teacher credential program. And so I would take information and utilize it in that program. But when I got to my dissertation, I could have graduated in 3 years, but I decided that I wanted a little bit more meat to my dissertation, and I added another phase, a content analysis. Finished 2 months late, 2 months later, but I wasn't in a rush. I took my time, I enjoyed the process, and was able to get a lot out of it. Currently, I'm teaching in a doctorate program. I'm teaching educational leadership and policy. I've taught administrators, and now I'm coordinating the teacher ed program. All the information I learned from the program, I can utilize it because I didn't rush myself. It wasn't an assignment. I wasn't trying just to get it done. I really wanted to take my time and learn so that I can apply. And again, Dr. Ladera says this is an EdD program, not a PhD. So my whole intent was, how can I use this for service? How can I use this in the field to support those who need support? So it wasn't just a process. It wasn't just a degree. This was, kind of a lifestyle. We talked about PAR, and our phrase for PAR was, PAR is a lifestyle. This is what you should be doing. So you're going over it and everything. And so basically we supported each other on that. It wasn't when you got done, we were still a cohort until the last person got done. So enjoy yourself. I think that's don't try to rush it. Enjoy the learning process.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Vijayla, tell us that one tip for us.
Well, I do have two. One is trust your own process. You're not competing with anyone but yourself. It's your growth. It's not measuring up against anybody. And the second one is, what you're doing with your EdD is to follow your passion and purpose. So my tip is to always follow your passion and purpose, because once you get the degree, it's not about the letters next to your name. It's about what you could do with those letters next to your name, So for me, it's like, trust yourself, trust your process, and follow your passion and your own purpose.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask Dr. Pierre John, could you also give us that one tip that the students can use to help them succeed through the ELAP program?
I would have to echo all of my fellow Pepperdine alumni in regards to, enjoy it, because honestly, even when you're going through the process, as much as you want to finish, like Maggie stated, you want to also, again, like the purpose why you're there. You're there to learn and to reflect, and how do you apply it to your current position or the positions you want to go into. I was like Maggie, I wanted to finish in 3 years, but my dissertation was about CSU female provosts and their careers. And as much as I wanted to finish in 3 years, I couldn't say no to a provost that wanted to join my research journey. So therefore, that, you want to take that as a good, positive way of moving forward, even though it's going to take longer. Life happens. I had an eye infection that took almost several months, and I couldn't do what I was planning to do. So even though these were obstacles that came my way because of my cohort members, because of individuals like Maggie who pushed me, and my dissertation chair and whatnot, I was able to push through. And yes, you come in with your cohort where you're strangers, but by the time that you finish your first semester, they become your true family members. And that's like one of the takeaways from this program.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So at this time, the students who have joined us, do you have any questions for Dr. Kane, our program director, or any of the alums who have spoken today? Do you have any questions about the program, about the dissertation phase, anything? This is your opportunity.
Hello, I have one. This is Gigi Williamson. Probably, I don't know if I show up as Gigi or Marguerite on the screen, but I wanted to ask, because I'm still grappling with this question, and the last speaker was mentioning, EdD versus PhD and how you allocate your time. And I know that it's not a problem that I haven't made this final determination, but I would love to hear how the panelists feel about the selection of whether you do, in the end, go for a PhD or not. Because I personally, but it may be just because I'm a neophyte, can see applications and usefulness for a PhD in being of service as well. I completely understand the model of the, I would say, engagement for professionals of the ELAP, but I love research, so it's a quandary for me, and I'd love to get your comments.
Dr. Sombera, you wanted to answer that?
Yeah, I think, because I grappled with this for several years, PhD, EdD, which one do I do? And I still love leadership, and I did an EdD. The decision that I made, and I can see it in my colleagues at the university level. I have a mentor right now from an EdD and a mentor from a PhD. The mentor from the PhD is like, well, we're really not here to teach. We're here just to do our research. And then I have the EdD, well, we really need to research to improve our practice. So it's kind of coming from a different angle. So you have to look at it. Either one is wonderful. So I think we support each other, because I go to my PhD friends because I'm not as versed with quantitative data analysis, because I don't do it all the time. I'm more of a qualitative researcher. They come to me for qualitative research. So it's a nice blend. But basically, you have to decide for you what's going to be your future, I think. So if you're staying into the educational leadership, administration world, it's really good, the EdD, because that's basically there. Now in the university, I've ran into some bias about EdD and PhDs, but eventually once they warm up to me, they don't see a difference. But they thought that EdDs can't do research. But once I start working with them, they realize, yes, we can do research, but we're more of an expert in qualitative research. And we put everything we do into practice. And we usually, when you mention action research, it's not a good thing at first. Eventually they warm up to it. Now our doctorate program is going to an action research style, and it's an EdD. and you can see the difference. So you have to decide for yourself and where you're going in the future and if it's going to cause roadblocks or not. But there's not, both professions can do it both. Application, policy, everything both professions can do. It's more of a bias, I think, um, that has been festering in at least higher ed for right now.
So are you, just as a follow-up, so are you saying it's really, if you were getting down to the brass tacks and you were just totally giving your personal view, that it's more of a nomenclature label than it is? I mean, I heard what you said about the emphasis on practice, and I think that's very important to me.
If you're going into, I want to think of develop a new theory, a theoretical framework, really get into the nitty gritties of research, you're going to get more training in a PhD program to do that. EdD programs, you're going to get more of the how to take the theory, put it into practice and research what you're doing to see if it's effective. But I think just from my own personal experience, a PhD will get you more if you want to develop a new model or strictly research some of those, be a top research in an area. The PhD tends to give you the skills in that area a little bit more. That's my personal opinion.
No, that's what
anybody else can jump in. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Landeros, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to comment, I think the best way I've heard this being explained is, PhD, you're a scholarly researcher. EdD, you're a scholarly practitioner. And that's just because of the way that I would say where there's differences is in the structure of your program. If you're doing the PhD route, as Dr. Suarez said, you're being trained at a deeper level. Around the research level, the research piece. And most of the time you're immersing in the research right away with your committee chair. And oftentimes you might know who that chair is gonna be from the moment you're admitted into the program, right? This person is coaching you to be them someday, essentially. So you are immersing into that research, the research world a lot quicker. Versus when you're doing the EdD, there's a lot of exploration around your personal leadership, your legacy, how it is that you manage others. There's elements of that in this program. And there's also the research that's embedded throughout. It's just done in a different way. So it really goes down to the structure. A PhD program, I can't say necessarily that you do as much of the introspection around your leadership and management style as you would within the EdD program. So I think it's also a preference of what are your goals or what do you hope to get out of this program? I agree in terms of, nowadays, I think there's more of an acceptance in the world of academia for EdDs. I think there's more openness. There's visible value from our counterparts around how EdD contributes to the research. And as I mentioned earlier, right, like if you go to a conference like AERA, most folks there have done a PhD or PhD graduates. And then there's now the EdDs that are emerging, but it's all about putting yourself in those spaces that you want to be in. You have to continue to open those doors for yourselves. It's just going to look a little different, but it doesn't necessarily limit you from those spaces. I would say the other part that I do see where, maybe there's less opportunities through the EdD route, because again, you're not doing research all the time in your program to maybe access, there's different like research fellowships, or other like, funded research. There's less of that happens in an EdD program. And part of it comes with the fact that most of us are working full time as we're students, right? That's the motto of the EdD, because there's that direct application. But ultimately, I think it's really thinking about what are your goals? What do you hope to get out of this? Or what do you hope to learn over your time in the program?
Thank you, Dr. Landeros. Katrisa, you have a question.
Yes, I hope you guys can hear me with the mask and all. Many of you shared your experiences as working professionals who are in a doctorate program. Can you share how you set up your time management for the dissertation phase when you were no longer reporting to classes and may have been working more independent of your cohort group members?
I think the hardest thing for me, because I have to have it quiet when I'm really getting into deep. So what I did is I ran my normal day, did things with my family. And then once they went to sleep, I went to sleep probably for about 2 hours. And then I got up and I did research for about 3 hours, laid back down, and then got up to work. So it was a lot of lack of sleep, but it worked for me because I didn't have the dog barking, I didn't have the phone ringing, I didn't have to do email. Nobody was up at that time. So I had to find a quiet time for myself because you need a big chunk. And I still do that with my own research right now. I can't do it during the day. There's too many interruptions. And that's not how my brain focuses. I got to have it quiet so I can really delve deep into the readings. So you have to find that time and you have to commit yourself to that time. No other priorities. That is that priority at that particular time.
In your chair, oh, sorry, I'll just add really quick. I was going to say your chair or your relationship with your chair is also going to be impactful and kind of staying within the schedule that you set for yourself. So I know my chair and Savet and I had the same chair. You know, she said, what do you want to do? What's the time frame you want to work with? What do you want to accomplish this semester? Because you sign up for dissertation every semester until you finish, right? So we set our goals for the term, and based on our goals, then we backwards plan what our schedule is going to look like, kind of what are the benchmarks that we're going to set. It also helps to have an accountability buddy. And for me, it was, you know, Dr. Pierre John here. And again, we would meet up, you know, as much as we could. And every day we set goals when we would meet up. So it wasn't just like, we're going to meet up just to work together. We would, you know, start our day, do our check-in as friends, and then say, what do we need to accomplish by today? And have a to-do list, right? But it was very much aligned to what we had already established with our chair. So that person's going to be the person that kind of continues to hold you accountable as much or as little as you let that person hold you accountable in that process as well.
It looks like Dr. Pierre John has a comment on this topic, and then the last question will go to Victoria. Okay, so Dr. Pierre John, I'll go ahead and let you speak.
I think it's important to have a set schedule, but I also think it's important for you to understand that there's going to be days that you want to accomplish a lot and you won't, and that's okay. I think that's one of the things that it was very hard for me to learn. And I know Maggie can, you know, back me up when I say this. There were days that we would plan to meet in the library, get a lot of work done because we had planned, but you just would do like one page of dissertation. And I want you all to know that that is okay and that will happen. But what you want to keep in mind is from that point on, how do you change your time management? I know I wasn't one who could sit for the whole day of Saturday, for example, and write. So I switched my time management in the sense where every day after work for 3 hours, I stayed on campus at my job and did my work. So when I went home, I could be distracted. And then when Saturday came, it was all write, or take a break, read. So I think it's important to understand that process, that even though at times you want to do a lot, sometimes you're going to hit a roadblock, and that's okay.
Thank you, Dr. Pierre John. Victoria, you will have the last question.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm currently in a dissertation process. I'm finishing up my my perspectives to do preliminary oral, but I just had a question in regards to the IRB process. Did the process take long for any of you, or, you know, yeah, that's the question. Did it take long for you? Did it stall a lot of things that like you had planned? Because we've talked a lot during this session, time management and plans in regards to finishing out the dissertation process. So I just wanted to know like how that went for you all, and then if you did have any obstacles with the IRB process, how did you get past them, or did you just have to wait it out?
Well, I didn't have any obstacles. I submitted, it was approved real quickly. But what I did ahead of time is my cohort members, we got together and we took a look at the IRB, and we kind of helped each other write it ahead of time while we were waiting for going through the preliminary process. And so we had it complete and our chairs could look over it. So it was pretty much complete before we even got done, just getting the information in there. We had to do little tweaks before I actually submitted it. But the more you get input on it, don't think that you have to do everything by yourself. Get what have other people done in the past. We talked to cohort members, that the cohort before us, and they gave us some tips of what to do. And so we utilized those as a group and we put it in there. We got feedback from all the chairs that we had. We brought it back, we looked at it, and every single one of us, we passed the first time. And so it was because we did a lot of work ahead of time. So work as a group. Don't think you're out there by yourself. I think the biggest mistake is when you get done with the classes, you think you're out there by yourself. You're not. So that's why it's a cohort group. Stay connected. Utilize the power of the cohort.
Thank you, Dr. Simbera. I wanted to ask.
I was just going to add really quick
about
the feedback. Other than the cohort, I know Sivat and I reached out to the IRB team that are in advance, and he was very kind about giving us feedback. So letting us know these are areas where we might have more questions around. And so the same thing, because we had that conversation in advance, the turnaround was really, really fast, but we prepared everything so that we knew exactly what might raise some flags, so that when we do submit the official one, we can go through without any problem. So that was helpful too. So just know that you don't have to wait for IRB to connect with them until you submit. They're really willing to help you even in advance.
Thank you. Dr. Kane, I wanted to get some comments from you because I saw you were putting some messages in the chat. So I wanted you to be able to speak on this too.
These are all really excellent tips. So I really appreciate your question around the tips. I know IRB can sometimes feel like the scary monster. And instead of the fear, I would require you to bring to it the diligence and the preparation. When you're getting ready to submit your IRB, it's at the time when you're like, okay, I'm finishing my prelims, I'm starting to think about the end, so people start rushing. When you start rushing, those little details of your inclusion criteria, your recruitment skip, all of those little details, they get skipped. And when you skip those details because of the IRB timeline, it puts you back. So instead of worrying so much about it, I love what our colleagues are saying here, what the alums are telling you, a collaborative approach. At this point, you got to use your team, use your squad, use your people, right? And work on this together. Once you get into that, I'm going to do this all by myself, silo, you're already at a disadvantage. So definitely use your advisor or your chair, use your the folks that have been working with you on your dissertation all throughout, your accountability partners. That's the way to really move this IRB thing from kind of this monster in the room to just another thing that you will do successfully.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kane. Thank you to all of our alumni for giving all of your wonderful advice and telling us about your experiences within the ELAP program. At this time, we have come to the end of the Student Alumni Roundtable. If some of the alums or Dr. Kane would like to provide contact information to the students, just so that they can contact you afterwards to possibly, if they have any questions, just to reach out to you, that would be great. Or if you didn't want to put it in the chat, you can always let me know in an email so that I can send all of those students your contact information. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Kane, for all of your advice and letting us know what's going on with the ELAP program. Thank you to all the alums, and thank you to all of the students who joined us. We really appreciate it. We hope that you got a lot from this Student Alumni Roundtable. And one thing we would love for you to do is to fill out our evaluation. One of the things that we want to make sure is that we can improve on our Student Alumni Roundtables. And if you see the QR code, please use your phone and click on that QR code so that you'll be able to send in an evaluation or a survey of this Student Alumni Roundtable. And for you to get more involved with GSEP Alumni Relations, there's another QR code. So you can click on that and let us know the different type of things that you would be interested in participating in, because we would love to have you participate in GSEP activities and alumni relations activities. So if there are no other questions at this time.
So just one small last comment. Thank you so much for Dr. Doran. We're so lucky to have you. You're a tremendous resource for our program. Not only are you an outstanding colleague, but you also are a Pepperdine alum. So thank you so much for creating this space for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is my pleasure, my pleasure. So if there are no other questions or no other comments, we thank you for joining us, and we look forward to you joining us for our next Student Alumni Roundtable. And believe me, we will have another one because we appreciate our alums and we value their advice and their time. So thank you to everyone and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, thank you. Don't forget to click on the surveys.
Thank you. Goodbye. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you so much.